Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Aleph and we'll be learning today Mirz Hashem Daf Chav Hey Amid Aleph. So, we're learning Hilchos Tzitzis. We're holding in Siman Yud Gimel, which discusses the halachas of Tzitzis as they pertain specifically to Shabbos. And in the beginning of Sif Gimel, the Mechaber introduced us to an interesting halacha. We learned in Sif Aleph that if you're wearing Tzitzis on Shabbos and the tzitzits are not kosher, then you have a problem of hoitzah, right? Let's say you're wearing a talis, and on one corner of the talis, the tzitzit strings have ripped in a manner which render the tzitzits pasul. So now you're outside in the Rishos HaRabim, you're wearing a talis that has tzitzit strings on them, but those tzitzit strings are not kosher, so they're not being effective. They're not pattering the beged of Dal Kanfos from tzitzits. But the tzitzit strings themselves are chashuv, especially the kosher strings. You're not going to remove the kosher strings from the beged. What you're going to do is you're going to fix the corner that's not okay, and the other three corners you're going to leave intact. So that means that the tzitzit strings that are attached to the beged are chashuv, and they cannot be bottled. They're also not bottled to the beged because they're not helping the beged. They're not pattering the beged because right now the tzitzits are pasul. So therefore in Sif Aleph, the Mechaber told us, if you go out on Shabbos to a Rishos HaRabim wearing a beged of Daled Kanfos with pasul tzitzits, you're being over hoitzah da'araisa. That's what we learned in Sif Aleph. In Sif Gimel, the Mechaber introduced us to a very interesting halachah. What happens if you're not in a Rishos HaRabim? What happens if you're in a Karmelis? Karmelis is a Rishos D'Rabbanan. Hoitzah in a Karmelis is only an Issa D'Rabbanan, it's not an Issa D'Oraisa. So let's say you're in a Karmelis, and again, you realize that the tzitzit strings of your talis or of your talis cotton are not kosher. So now you're being over Hoitzah D'Rabbanan. Said the Mechaber, even though this is a case of Hoitzah D'Rabbanan, you're not mechuyev to take your talis off. Why? Because when you're going in the Karmelis with pasul tzitzits, that's Hoitzah D'Rabbanan. And guess what? Kavod Abriyos, it would be very embarrassing for you if you had to suddenly take off your talis because you realized your talis was pasul. And an Issa D'Rabbanan is nitcha mipnei Kavod Abriyos. The Torah is so worried about Kavod Abriyos, about a person's kavod, about a person's honor, that the Torah Akdosha does not want that for the sake of an Issa D'Rabbanan, you should lose your Kavod Abriyos. So the halach is, you're being over Hoitzah D'Rabbanan, you could continue to wear the talis until you get home. Now, we wondered yesterday, but wait a second, how about the fact that you're wearing a talis without proper tzitzits? L'chayra, that's bittul asay of a mitzvah asay daraisa. The mitzvah asay daraisa, when you have a beged of Daled Kanfos, you have to have tzitzits on them. Now you're wearing a beged of Daled Kanfos with pasul tzitzits. Why aren't you being mevatel a mitzvah asay daraisa? And a daraisa is not nidche mipnei kavod abriyos. And the Mishnah Berurah explained that there's a very big difference between Shabbos and during the week when it comes to the mitzvah asay of tzitzits. During the week, if you wear a beged of Daled Kanfos without tzitzits, you're taka being mevatel a mitzvah asay daraisa. But not so on Shabbos. On Shabbos, the Torah Akdosha is not going to give us a mitzvah asay to tie tzitzits onto a beged of Daled Kanfos on Shabbos, when to do so would be in direct violation of Hilchos Shabbos. One of the lamentes malachas is kosher, tying knots. So you cannot possibly put tzitzits onto your beged on Shabbos. Therefore, the Torah Akdosha does not give us a mitzvah asay daraisa to put tzitzits on a beged on Shabbos. And it's only midrabanan that you cannot wear a beged of Daled Kanfos without tzitzits on Shabbos. So again, now to take all of this into consideration, if on Shabbos you are wearing a beged of Daled Kanfos without tzitzits, so as far as Hilchos Tzitzis is concerned, that's only Issa D'Rabbanan. As far as Hoitzah is concerned, it depends where you are. If you're in a bona fide Rishos HaRabim, if you're in a Rishos HaRabim Daraisa, so then to walk with those pasul tzitzis would be Hoitzah Daraisa, and you're not allowed to do that. Not even Kavod Abriyos would allow you to do that. But if you're in a Karmelis, if you're in a Rishos D'Rabbanan, so that you're only being over Hoitzah D'Rabbanan, in that case, since it's a shaila of Kavod Abriyos, you're allowed to continue wearing the talis. You don't have to take it off. Mipnei kavod habrius. Now let's pick up on Chaf Hei Amud Aleph with the Ramah. The Mechaber specifically was addressing a talis gadol. How about a talis cotton? Says the Ramah, Haga, va'afilu talis katan shetachas begadov. Even if you're wearing a talis cotton under your shirt. So you're wearing a talis cotton under your shirt, you would think that to take off that talis cotton, why is that such a pigia in kavod habrius? Once you put your shirt back on, nobody's going to know that you are walking around without a talis cotton. So is that such a pigia in kavod habrius that should allow you to continue wearing it despite the Yisur D'Rabbanan? Says the Ramah, yes. Va'afilu talis cotton shetachas begadav ein tzarich livshoit. Even the talis cotton that you're wearing under your shirt or under your jacket, if you're wearing it over your shirt, still and all, you're not mechuyev to take it off if you're in a rishus D'Rabbanan. Since you're only being over haitzah D'Rabbanan, you're in a Carmelis, you're not mechuyev to take off that talis cotton. Why is that? Says the Mishnah Berurah cotton Yud Aleph, shetachas begadav. Even though we're talking about a talis cotton that's under your clothing, it's still a pigia in kavod habrius. Why? Says the Mishnah Berurah, the chiddush over here that the Ramah is saying is you're not mechuyev to take off the talis cotton, even though once you take off the talis cotton and put your shirt back on, it's loy minka remilsa. No one's going to realize that you're not wearing a talis cotton. Still, you're not mechuyev to take it off. Why? But what do you have to do in order to remove the talis cotton? You have to take off your shirt, and then you have to take your talis cotton. What are you going to do? You're going to start getting undressed outside in the street? So certainly that would be a tremendous pigia in kavod habrius. And since you're only being over an Yisur D'Rabbanan, an Yisur D'Rabbanan is nitche mipnei kavod habrius, and you could continue to wear the talis cotton. Says the Ramah weiter, the last word of the first line, Chaf Hei Amud Aleph. V'hu adin im nifsak echad hatzitzis. The same halacha applies. Let's say one of your tzitzits got torn off. You're in shul. You went to shul Shabbos morning. So you got up Shabbos morning, you put on your talis, you made a bracha, you went to shul. Now you're sitting in shul, somebody steps on your tzitzit string and rips off your tzitzit strings in a manner so that your talis is now pasul. One would think that immediately you have to take the talis off. Says the Ramah, no. So too, if one of your tzitzit strings become torn off, or the tzitzit strings become torn off in a manner that renders them pasul, let's say this happened in the middle of Pesukei de Zimra, and let's say the shul somehow doesn't have a talis that you could use. So now you're going to be sitting the rest of davening without a talis. Says the Ramah, in that case, your tzitzit strings became torn in shul, and now you're going to be mevuza if you have to sit there the rest of davening without a talis. Do yuchal lelavshay beloy bracha? If, let's say this happened even before you put your talis on. You came to shul to put your talis on, you took out your talis, you held it up over your head, somebody stepped on your tzitzit strings and ripped your tzitzit strings. Now what? Says the Ramah, you could put the tzitzits on without a bracha, and you could continue to wear that talis the whole duration of davening in shul. Why? Says the Ramah, mikayach kavod habrius. Because of kavod habrius, you're allowed to wear the talis. Now, in this case, you're in shul. Over here, there is no shayla v'hitzah, not the raisa, not the rabbanon. But there still is the Yisur D'Rabbanan that you're wearing a beged of dalit kanvas without kosher tzitzits, which again, on Shabbos, is only a D'Rabbanan. It's not a daraisa. Since it's only a D'Rabbanan is nitche mipnei kavod habrius, and you can sit in shul wearing a pasul talis. You can sit in shul the whole davening. You can't put it on with a bracha. You put it on without a bracha, but you could wear it the entire davening. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Yud Beis, Min hatzitzios. The words of the Ramah were, if one of the tzitzios became torn. Pirush, the explanation of this is, says the Chavetz Chaim, Bein shebal lebeis hakneses v'roitza lilbosh talisai. There's two different cases that the Ramah is addressing here. One is, if you came to shul and you have not yet put on your talis, you want to put the talis on, but before you put it on, matzah tzitzis pasulim, you realize that the tzitzis are pasul. So maybe we had this lengthy discussion yesterday about checking your tzitzis on Shabbos before you put them on. So you came to shul Shabbos morning, you checked your tzitzis, you realize your tzitzis are pasul. But you're going to be muvuzah. You're going to be embarrassed to sit the whole davening Shabbos morning without a talis. Every 5 minutes, someone's going to come over to you. You realize you're not wearing a talis? Excuse me, you forgot to put on your talis? So you're going to be muvuzah to sit there without a talis. The mutter l'lav shei b'li bracha. The Rambam's telling you, you're allowed to go lechatchila and put this talis on without a bracha. Ubein, and then the second case is Ubein imraya be'emtza levishasai shenifsku layatzitzitz. Or in middle of davening, like I said, somebody stepped on your tzitzits and your tzitzits became ripped off. Gamkein ain't tzarich lahasiroi. You're not mechuyev to take the talis off. And again, all of this is because we're only dealing with the Isurei D'Rabbanan here. The only problem that we have here is an Isurei D'Rabbanan of wearing a beged of Dalit Kanfas on Shabbos without tzitzits. And Kavod Abrius, the Isurei D'Rabbanan is Nidche. And he brings this down from the Birkei Yosef to Atzachayim Shari Achronim. However, he does bring down here at the end of Eis Kat Yud Beis a little bit of a caveat. Says the Chofetz Chaim, V'ayin ba'achronim, he says, take a look at the achronim, she'eskimu, who they reach a consensus, da'akol talui b'ritzayin ha'ish haloivesh, that this is not a flat halacha, that we just say that you're allowed to be over this at the Rabbanon. You could wear a talis, you could wear a beged of Dalit Kanfas without tzitzits because of Kavod Abrius. It depends on the person who's wearing the talis. Imu misbayish, yuchalil baish b'li bracha. If he's a person who taka will be embarrassed, so then yes, this halacha applies, and mipnei Kavod Abrius, he's allowed to put on the talis without a bracha, and he's allowed to continue wearing the talis. Avalim ein misbayish, but if he's a very, I'm not sure if the proper word is tough, but if he's a very confident person, and he's not going to be embarrassed. I'm not wearing a talis because my talis is pasul. So then, im ein misbayish, ein kada heter to Kavod Abrius. This heter is a heter based on Kavod Abrius. If your Kavod Abrius demands that you wear this talis despite the Isurei D'Rabbanan, you're allowed to. But if you're a fellow who is not going to be affected by it, then you're not mechuyev to. Then this heter does not apply to you. Then you should be chayshish for the Isurei D'Rabbanan, and you should not wear the talis. I can't resist. I have to tell you a great story based on this. My Rebbe, Rebbe Feinstein, Shlita, Zayin Gesund und Stark, told me that many, many years ago, he went away for a Shabbos during the summer, and he was staying in the same place as one of his Rabbeim, Rav Gifter, Zechet Tzaddik Kodesh Livracha. And they both came down on Erev Shabbos to the shul, and they both came down about a half hour before Mincha. They came down to the shul, they opened up a sefer, and they were learning. And Rav Gifter was sitting there in his shirt sleeves with his hat, but he was not wearing a kapota. All right, so everybody figured, he's hot, it's during the summer, he didn't put on his kapota yet, and when it comes time for Mincha, he'll put on a kapota. All right, comes time to Mincha, Rav Gifter gets up, he starts saying Ashrei. Sure enough, somebody comes over to him, Rosh Yeshiva, I don't know if the Yeshiva realizes, you're not wearing kapota. So Rav Gifter looks and says, Azoi Firtman in Tells. That's the way we do things in Tells. Rav Gifter Zatzal was, of course, the famous Rosh Yeshiva of the Tells Yeshiva in Cleveland. He said, Azoi Firtman in Tells. That's the way we do things in Tells. All right, guy looks very strange. All right, walks away. Sure enough, another fellow comes over. Anshuldik, the Yeshiva's not wearing kapota. Azoi Firtman in Tells. All right, like Rabbi told me, by the time davening was over, probably 30 people came over to Rav Gifter to remind him, to point out to him that he's not wearing kapata, and each time Rav Gifter said, Azoi Firtman in Tells. Now, the interesting thing is that Reb Ruvain learnt in tells as a bacher. So finally, when davening was over, Reb Ruvain turns to Reb Gifter. He says, "Good Shabbos" to Reb Gifter. He smiles at Reb Gifter, and he says, "I have one question." So Reb Gifter smiled and said, "What?" He said, "I learnt in tells. Azoi wird mir nicht in tells. In tells, they don't, that's not what they do. They don't daven in their shirt sleeves." So Reb Ruvain asked him, "Azoi wird mir nicht in tells. That's not what they do in tells. So what's pshat?" So Reb Gifter smiled at him, and Reb Gifter said, "In tells viertman, in tells, the minig is, what we do in tells is that if the taxi driver that brought you for Shabbos drives off with your kapata hanging in the back seat, then you daven without a kapata." So that's what happened. The taxi driver dropped off from Gifter and drove off with his kapata. So he didn't have a kapata. So what's he supposed to do? Hide in his room all Shabbos and daven michidus because he doesn't have a kapata? He doesn't have a kapata. He doesn't have a kapata. So he davened without a kapata. And Ajay Firtman tells. And the truth is, there is a tells a piece to it, which is Ajay Firtman tells that if we have to daven without a kapata because we don't have the kapata, we don't go slink in the back and hide and feel all self-conscious and everything else. No, we do exactly what we're supposed to do. We daven in the same way that we would always daven, in the same place that we would always daven, with the same stolz that we would always daven, but we don't put on a kapata because we don't have a kapata. What are you going to do? So, if a person has the ability, if he realizes that his talis is pasul, and his talis is pasul, he won't wear a talis. So he'll be in shul without a talis. And if somebody will ask him, he'll say, "Yeah, I don't have a talis. My talis is pasul." And he won't be muvuzah. So then there is no heter of kavod abrius to be over this is the Rabbanon and wear a beged of daled kanfus without tzitzis. Okay. Ois katan yud gimel. The Ramah said, in these cases, you're allowed to put on the talis without a bracha, and you're allowed to continue wearing it because of kavod abrius. However, says the Chavetz Chaim, v'dafka im noidaloi hayoim. However, this is only true if the fact that the talis is pasul came to your attention today on Shabbos, when there's nothing you can do about it. Aval, however, im yada me erev Shabbos tzitzis psulin, but if you knew already on erev Shabbos that the tzitzis were pasul, and you didn't take care of it, also lelav shay b'Shabbos, then you're not allowed to go lechatchila and put it on without a bracha and wear it on Shabbos to have a leila sekuna me'esmoil, because you should have fixed it yesterday. Achim shachach yesh lahakel. But if you forgot, then you could be mekel. And this is the same halachah that we saw yesterday. We saw this halachah yesterday in Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan. Give me a second. We said you don't cancel him. Ois Katan Ches. Yesterday we said that if you knew from before Shabbos that the tzitzis were pasul, and you forgot to fix it, and then you realized when you were outside in the Carmelis that they're pasul, we said you don't have to go take it off. We don't cancel you. And we brought a raya from the case of the Beis HaKisei in the Chotzer, where you need an Erev to use the Beis HaKisei, and you forgot to make an Erev. We allow you to use the Beis HaKisei despite the fact that you neglected to make an Erev. So too over here, you knew before Shabbos that the tzitzis were pasul. You should have fixed them. You forgot. So we don't cancel you. We allow you to put it on without a bracha and wear it. But if you knew about it and you did not forget, you just bedafka didn't fix it. It wasn't your priority. So you didn't fix it. In that case, you have no heter. In that case, you can't wear it. Ois katan yud dalid, and the basis of this heter is kavod abrius, mikayach kavod abrius. Points out the Chavetz Chaim, yes, you have a heter because of kavod abrius. V'dafke mein yakal lahasik bebeis hakneses talis she'ula. But of course, this is only if there's no other way out. If you could borrow the shul's talis, borrow the shul's talis. Or if somebody else in shul has his vakadik talis there, and he has a talis that he can lend you, so borrow a talis from somebody. Don't wear this talis that will entail being over an Issa D'Rabbanan because of a heter of kavod abrius if there's another way out. Now finally, the Ramah makes a very, very critical point here The last line of the Ramah, right by the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Tezvav, says the Ramah, this whole heter only applies, Vedafka b'Shabbos. This whole heter only exists on Shabbos. The Asar Lasos Tzitzis, because on Shabbos, like we've explained repeatedly, on Shabbos you're not allowed to make tzitzis. And since you're not allowed to make tzitzis on Shabbos because of the Yisr of Kosher, therefore, there's only an Issa D'Rabbanan involved in wearing a beged of Daled Kanfus without tzitzis. And that's why you can have a heter of Kavod Abrius. But during the week, you have no heter. During the week, when you're allowed to make tzitzis, wearing a beged of Daled Kanfus without tzitzis is Bittul Aseh Daraisa. Bittul Aseh Daraisa you can't do because of a heter of Kavod Abrius. And Aval B'Choil Kai Gavna, Aser. During the week, this would all be Aser. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Tezvav. V'dafka b'Shabbos. All of these heterim only apply on Shabbos. Pirush, the explanation of this is, says the Chavetz Chaim Katan Tezvav, Lefi Shabbos lesser rak Issa D'Rabbanan kanal. Because on Shabbos, wearing a beged of Daled Kanfus without tzitzits is only an Issa D'Rabbanan, like we've seen previously. Aval b'Choil, but during the week, Shehu Oiver al Issa Torah, where you would be over an Issa Daraisa, b'chol shah, every second that you're wearing the tzitzits, the beged of Daled Kanfus, the kum va'aseh boy tzitzits, you have a mitzvah say daraisa to get up and put tzitzits on this beged of Daled Kanfus. And every second that you're wearing the tzitzits without putting tzitzits on it, I shouldn't say it that way. Every second that you're wearing the beged of Daled Kanfus without putting kosher tzitzits on it, you're being mavatal a mitzvah say daraisa. V'Issa Torah, an Issa Daraisa, afilu rak Issa d'Sheva al taise kazeh. Even though, how are you being mevatel l'misaseh? You're not being mevatel an Issa Daraisa b'kum va'aseh. You're not getting up and performing an Isser. It's not like somebody who goes and says Lashon Hara, or somebody who gets up and eats ma'achalos asuros, or somebody who gets up and carries chas v'chalila outside on Shabbos. In those cases, you're being over an Issa Daraisa b'kum va'aseh. You are actively being over an Issa Daraisa. This case is more kulidik, because in this case you're being over an Issa Daraisa b'shev va'al taisa, by sitting and doing nothing. It's passive. You're wearing a beged of Daled Kanfus, but that's not kum va'aseh. I'm not doing something. I'm sitting in a chair, or I'm standing in my seat, or even if I'm walking around. The walking has nothing to do with the Isser. The tzitzits are laying on my body. And what I'm doing is, I'm neglecting to put on tzitzits. That's a passive transgression of an Issa Daraisa. So the Chavetz Chaim is pointing out over here that during the week, even though you're being over an Issa Daraisa only passively, only Sheva al Taisa, still, says the Mishnah Berurah, afilu rak Issa d'Sheva al Taisa kazeh. Even a passive transgression of an Issa Daraisa like this, shehu ma'neya as atzmai mitzvah, where he's just refraining from being mekayim the mitzvah, he's refraining from putting on the tzitzits, ein nitcha b'pnei kavod abrius. An Issa Daraisa, and this is a klal, this is a rule that we should remember in halachah. An Issa Daraisa, even an Issa Daraisa b'shev va'al taisa, passively, is not nitche mipnei kavod abrius imloi b'gnai gadol, unless it's a tremendous embarrassment, a gnai gadol. But a smaller gnai, a small level of embarrassment, is not doicha an Issa Daraisa, even sheva al taisa, even passive transgression. And therefore, says the Mishnah Berurah, also lil by shatalas gadol, you're not allowed to put on a talis gadol during the week. Kisharaya she'ein by tzitzits, if you see that it doesn't have kosher tzitzits. Deleshe b'li talis, because to sit in shul, even by shachris, without a talis, svir leil ramadu rak bechlal gnai katan. That's not called a gnai gadol. That's called a gnai katan. Think about it. You go to shul by shachris. You see a yid sitting wearing his tefillin, and he's not wearing a talis. Do you look at him and say, "Oh, that's crazy. That guy must be nuts"? No, I don't know. Maybe he finished davening already. He's being mavisedra and he's hot, so he took off his talis. There could be 100 reasons why he's not wearing his talis. Maybe he went to the Beis HaKisei, he came back, he put his tefillin back on, he didn't put his talis back on. Yeah, I don't know. But I don't think it rises to the level of a Gnai Gadol. And forget what I think. The Ramah, Chavetz Chaim is telling me, the Ramah says that this is not a Gnai Gadol. This is only a Gnai Cotton. And since it's only a Gnai Cotton, it's not Nidchem, it may cover the Brias, because it's a Daraisa. Even though it's a Daraisa B'Shev Al Taisa, but it's still a Daraisa. V'chein, and similarly, says the Chavetz Chaim, Im noidaloi b'Rishus HaRabim, if somebody is in a real bona fide Rishus HaRabim, a Rishus HaRabim Daraisa on Shabbos, Kishu Hoylech B'Talis Gadol, and he's wearing his Talis Gadol, and he sees Shenifsak Lo Yachas B'Tzitzi Yosef, that one of his tzitzis strings got ripped off. So somebody's walking outside on Shabbos in a real Rishus HaRabim, and one of his tzitzis get ripped off. He has to immediately take off the talis, because if not, he's being override sadaraisa. Can't do that. Taking off your talis gadol outside in the street doesn't rise to the level of a gnai gadol. That's only a gnai cotton. Amnon, however, im bebeis hakneses noidaloi achar. If somebody realizes in shul, after he's already wearing the talis, that one of his tzitzis are pasul, and now we're talking about during the week. On Shabbos, if you're sitting in shul and you realize that your tzitzis are pasul, the Ramah said you're allowed to wear it. Why? Kavod Abrius, and it's only this to Rabbanon. Wearing a beged of dal conscious without tzitzis on Shabbos is only this to Rabbanon. But now, how about during the week? That's the case that the Chavetz Chaim is talking about here. Omnam, im bebeis hakneses noidaloi. If somebody is in shul during the week and it becomes known to him, achar shu kvar lovush ba'talis, after he's already wearing his talis, shachas v'tzitziyosa psulim, that one of his tzitzis are pasul, harbe min achrayim mekilin. Many achrayim are mekel, and they say you could continue to wear the talis. They ain't sarch lepashtoi tekef, and you don't have to yank it off. To svir lehu, because they hold. To kevin chu barabim bebeis hakneses, because since you're in public, you're amongst a lot of other people in shul, hapshita ugnai b'yoser, having to rip off your talis in the middle of davening in shul is taka gnai gadol. And even though you're being mevatel a mitzvah say daraisa, every second that you're wearing that talis without kosher tzitzits, since it's a gnai gadol, and it's only a transgression that is passive, it's only shev al taisa, it's doicha. Rak yamar leilach lebeisai, he should run home, or he should run to the lobby of the shul, and he should take off his talis bitzina. Shouldn't make a whole big rash, whole big rash gudel about it. However, the Chayyodam is machmir and says, don't keep that talis on. With Svirle, he holds the Apshitas HaTalis Gadol who rakanai cotton. And I mean, Chayyodam certainly does not need my approbation, but that is what resonates with me. Is it such a gnai gadol if in shul, in the middle of shacharis, you realize that your talis is pasul and you take it off right away? So somebody will come to you and say, I'm just curious, why did you yank your talis off? Oh, somebody stepped on my tzitzis and ripped my tzitzis. Oh, okay. I mean, is it such a gnai gadol? It doesn't sound like a gnai gadol to me. And the Chayyodam says, everybody takes off their talisim in shul. What's the big deal? The Chavetz Chaim says that later on, he saw in the Pri Megadim's preface to Ilches Tzitzis, that he also held like the Chayyodam, that you should be machmer. Al-Kain, therefore, it is proper. So the Sefer Atzis HaChaim has a very cute eitzah. He says, Sheyaf Girenu. What you should do is, while you're wearing it, As soon as you see that the tzitzis became pasul, be mafkir your talis. The oz potter is by tzitzis. If it's hefker, if the beged doesn't belong to you, a beged of dal canvas that's not yours is not chayiv in tzitzis. And then when you get home, be kind it again from hefker and put on tzitzis. Ice cotton to Zion. This heter of covenant brias only exists on Shabbos, but during the week it's asur. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cotton to Zion. I'm among an Avram Shemasik who concludes the Mashamakmer HaRamah B'chol. This that the Ramah is machmer during the week. Like koyam hashakasa b'tchila va'afil b'talis cotton. It doesn't go back on taking off a talis cotton if you realize that it's pasul. The b'talis cotton, if you realize that your talis cotton, you're walking in the street on a fine Wednesday, and suddenly you look down at your tzitzis and you realize that your tzitzis are pasul. Do you have to yank off your shirt and yank off your talis cotton in the middle of the street? Says the Magen Avram, no. The batalis cotton im noidaloi shatzitzis psulim the yesh like gnai godol lepashtai mitachas begodov, because again, now we're dealing with a gnai godol. What, you're walking in the street on 30th Avenue, or on Rupert Avenue, or on Madison Avenue, or on, I'm just trying to cover a bunch of different communities over here, Coney Island Avenue. You're walking in the middle of the street, and on a fine Wednesday afternoon, you realize your tzitzis are pasul. What, you suddenly have to rip your shirt off and take your talis cotton off? That's definitely a gnai godel. So you're not going to get undressed in the middle of the street. And since, again, you're only transgressing an Isser Torah passively, it's only Sheva al Taisa, I'm wearing a beged of dal canvas, and I'm not actively putting tzitzis strings on, so I'm being mevatel and it's asay daraisa passively, but there's a gnai godel. So gnai godel, covenant brias is doiche. The Yeshua gnai godel, pashtu, b'tax begodov, bein b'beis HaKnesses, whether this happens in shul, ubein barabim, or in the street, ein tzarech l'pashtai. You do not have to go ahead and immediately take it off. And with that, we conclude just what I find to have been a fascinating Siman Yud Gimel, and Mir Hashem, we will continue after Shabbos with Siman Yud Dalet. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The source of limud HaTorah should be banging against Klal Yisrael. The Rabbi Hashem should send Yeshua's for his parnasset sheduchim to all those in need, and we should be zeicher to see the B'Yeskel Tzedek b'mher v'yameinu amen. Be well.